Kia ora tātou, no mai haere mai. Wade Manson here from Te Tairawhiti, and you're listening to our podcast, The Sideline Yak. Kua hoki mai mātou, we are back. Apologies to our Sideline Yak listeners for the little hiccup in our episode scheduling. Our aim was always to have one per month, but the last few months have been absolutely crazy. And yes, we missed last month's episode due to work and life, but that's okay. We're back now and we have another episode of Chronicles of a Coach. In this episode, we are joined by Lizzie Hall and Lee Smith, two coaches who will be familiar to our football community.
In London Street on the park there would always be playing long ball. Yes, it was just all the community kids would turn up at an area, Anzac Park, go down there and there'll be everyone playing something.
Lizzie and Lee have been involved with football both from a young age. Lizzie starting here in Gisborne and Lee over in the UK. They are passionate about football. You will either see them playing, officiating and coaching most weekends, potentially doing all three over a weekend. They are strong advocates for the improvement of female football here in Te Tairawhiti and have both previously worked for Central Football in the development space. We talked to them about their early years, what got them into coaching and who their influences were. We also take a look at women's football here and discuss what we can do to better support it, including touching on the rep program and the challenges our district faces. Plus, we answer the big question, why is it called football and soccer? And explore the origin of why football is known as the beautiful game. We are almost at the end of our first series, whānau, of the Sideline Yak, and we would love to get your feedback. We want to know what you liked and what you didn't. If you know someone from Te Tairawhiti who would make a great guest, please let us know. Feel free to share your thoughts with us by emailing theyak@whitiorder.org. For now, let's get back to the show. Please enjoy this episode with Lizzie and Lee. Kia ora. Welcome back to another episode of the Chronicles of a Coach. A special thanks also again to Rangai for letting us use the podcast studios. So almost need to be chucking the advert on here for them. Yeah, so Rangai Studios, if you're looking at doing podcasts, filming, editing, anything like that, they are top notch. So come and have a visit of their studios or just come and have a chat to Shannon. Right, let's kick it off. Again, kia ora kōrua. Lee and Lizzie, we have here in the studio today from football. We'll just go around and introduce ourselves and tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do. Lizzie, where you go?
Kia ora. I'm Lizzie. Had a lot to do with Gisborne football. Brought up through the ranks here in Gisborne. Played rep football under some great coaches, women coaches as well. Moved to Hawke's Bay. Played in the Hawke's Bay rep teams as well. Moved to Wellington, played for in the Central League Women's competition over there as well. Coach Wainui ladies team at the moment and was former Central Football's development officer.
Nice, thank you. Lee?
I think we both come from that background. So I'm Lee Smith. I am current director of football at Gisborne Thistle, which is a new role, which is not at all intimidating with a 100-year-old club. Obviously, I'm from the UK, grew up living, breathing, eating, sleeping football. As a player, I didn't come to it till quite late in the day. I was probably 12, 13 before I started playing seriously for a team. And I was picked up very quickly, played a little bit of semi-pro, and then joined up in the army. And yeah, since then I've had a variety of different coaching roles. Playing's mostly still grassroots and veterans, but coaching roles, I've coached Women's National League and I've coached Futsal National League. And my playing background's actually probably primarily futsal as opposed to football. I did a lot more of that. Smaller pitch, less running, naturally lazy guy. But yeah, so I'm just in the role now. It's still doing a little bit of support work for Central Football, but like Lizzie, I was the development officer for a couple of years.
Cool, thank you. Like we do with all the coaches, we have a look at their origin story. So Lizzie, we'll start with you. Can you share with us what sport looked like for you growing up?
I played everything. My older brother was my inspiration. He played everything. So I was the one that he got, dragged outside to play cricket, rugby league, football, basketball, Yeah, just typical Gisborne kid, really. You did everything. Swimming, surf lifesaving.
Did you enjoy it?
Yeah.
Yeah. What made it enjoyable?
I think making lots of friends. Oh, and every now and again being able to beat my brother.
Did it help you in terms of when you went into football, the numerous sports that you had played, or was it just that you just wanted to give everything a go?
I actually wanted to play rugby, but girls weren't allowed to play when I was at primary school. So a teacher came past and said, would you want to give football a go? And I said, yep. And that's how it all started.
Did you ever go back to rugby? Like once you were into football?
When I was a bit older.
Yeah.
But football ended up being my first sport.
Yeah. With rugby, like how far did you go?
So played for Poverty Bay and East Coast. Played league for Te Tairawhiti as well. So just based here in Gisborne. I was a mum at that time, so wasn't going too far. My family's all about sport and kids were on the sideline. Dad was on the sideline, so we watched his sport. So vice versa.
Nice. Lee, same question. What does sport look like for you growing up? And the UK, I guess, as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, in the UK, generally, there's a relatively clear divide. You play football or you don't. You know, there's the old adage that rugby players are from private schools and football players are from public schools. It sort of stands up, or at least it did when I was growing up. Like, similar to Liz, played every single sport for my school. Like, I actually held a record in the school, which was I was very much a journeyman, never the best player on the team, but I did play for every single school team in 1 year. And I think that sort of probably explained my relationship with sport, is that I wanted to do everything. The PE teacher's favourite student, because no matter what we're doing, even if I was terrible at it, I'd still throw the kitchen sink at it. And, you know, and just, I just enjoyed it so much that it made it easy to just be involved in everything. So, you know, one season it was hockey, rugby, cricket, tennis, athletics, swimming, football as well. And I mean, it probably helped the fact that I wasn't quite at the top of the pecking order for football. So if you weren't getting into the first 11, it was generally like, go and try something else. The same as I grew up, you know, because I was a high effort player, because I was very versatile, because I'd do whatever the coach wanted, you know, play left wing, play left back, play right back, play number 9, whatever they wanted. That's how I sort of edged my way into the football teams. And as I progressed through, because it had mostly been just playing with my friends, you know, it was very much a social thing for me, because it was the accepted thing to do. And then as I progressed, got to play some club football, and my uncle used to take me to Villa Park every Saturday, which helped. Then I started to realise that, I'm actually like reasonably good. So, I got opportunities. And again, it was being versatile and being committed. And coaches were like, we need a left back. And the youth team coach just went, take Smithy. Like, easy. You know, he'll just do exactly as you tell him to do. He'll put a good, solid performance in. You won't moan. And that's how I sort of progressed into semi-pro football. Then the same way, you know, just being versatile, just being available, being committed, and never really lighting the pitch up, you know. But the other side of the coin was futsal. So futsal, I mean, when we started out, it was more five-a-side than futsal. It wasn't specifically the game of futsal. It was just indoor five-a-side. Me and a bunch of friends got together, got a team going, ended up in a national tournament. And then all of a sudden, you know, the futsal people are like, we want a few of these boys to play a bit of futsal. And it was still relatively new then, but that's where I had the opportunity then to move away from missed commitment and sort of start to express myself a bit. So that's the progression that I made through there. And it gave me a lot of opportunities to play in a sport that was new. And then again, I bounced around backwards and forwards. And then when I was in the military, I played a lot, did a lot of coaching. So yeah, it was all very much a relatively easy pathway to follow.
Nice. So we talked around school, but I just want to look outside of school in terms of the amount of different opportunities you had, like playing different sports with your brother, like being out there, like, as you said, football, Lee. What does that look like outside of school in terms of, I'm thinking about now when we look at kids these days, they don't have those, well, I don't know if they don't have those opportunities, but there's not as many kids out there free playing. And I know back when, in my day when I was younger, and obviously your guys as well, we would have been out there playing a lot more sport, but it's just sort of like not structured. We're just out there. We've got a ball, we're kicking a ball around. And football was always good like that. You could just take a ball down, kick a ball around. A whole lot of mates turned up from the neighbourhood and away we went. Do you see, like, was that an opportunity for you guys back in your day? Like, did you find that a lot more than probably what there is today?
Yeah, backyard sports. Yeah, we used to go down across one street and play league with the neighbours down that street. And London Street on the park there would always be playing long ball. Yeah, so it was just all the community kids would turn up at an area, Anzac Park, go down there and there'll be everyone playing something.
Yeah. Yeah. Is that something we're missing now, or do you think we
100%.
should? Yeah.
100%. So, I mean, I'm quite big on play-based learning, and it's something I really want to instigate, particularly with Thistle at the moment. You know, there's a lot of new stuff that I want to try and bring in next year, fund independent, to encourage that sort of stuff. And for me, a big part of what I want to do and what I want to try and encourage is getting the gates open at 3:00. We get the gates open at 3:00. There's a few balls out on the pitch. There's a few little goals. There's whatever other equipment we can use, and just, again, unsupervised football. You know, like for me growing up, as I said, like football was enormously social for me. So we created infinite different ways to play football. You know, if it was one person with a wall, you know, or there'd be 3 or 4 people play World Cup or various other iterations that we created. And it was quite an equalising thing as well. There was the like seasonal gypsy family that used to come to our local park. And it was like, for us, it was like the World Cup. You know, every time they were in town, we'd be playing games against them, and it was fantastic. Like, it was open, everyone loved each other, and it was just a lot of fun, and it was just so, you know, exciting for us to play someone different outside of our club football and stuff. That, yeah, it made it really interesting for us, and it just opened it up. It just meant we could go. You know, the rule generally was, if you're not at school, you're at the park, and, you know, time to go home was street lights came on.
Yeah.
That was time to go home, you know.
Yeah.
We're only ever sort of 10 minutes away from home, but it was really important, I think. And even playing at school, every single break time, you know, we were told we used to play on the tarmac tennis courts at the back end of the school. We weren't allowed to use a full-size football because there were gardens and greenhouses and windows along the side of the fence line. So we were told we had to play with a tennis ball. And you can see the difference with a player that has grown up with those restrictions. You know, like, it's like, you know, the old stories with the Brazilians and Pele with the mango and all that sort of stuff. But it makes a big difference if you've played and adapted and had that time to play. That's how you discover yourself, how you are as a player. You know, if it's always drills, it's always holiday programs, it's always club football, it's always structured and coached. And I do think we coach that too much.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. How do we then, like, if it's not happening out in the community and, like, the kids aren't having those opportunities, how do we then as coaches instigate play within our training so that we can actually still, like, we've got the structured, and yeah, we have trainings, we have skill development and stuff like that, but how do we integrate play into that so that they're still getting something and they're able to learn without having that, I suppose, fear of failure as well?
I think there's an element of the clubs and the coaches have to create that opportunity without enforcing the structure. I mean, there's loads of kids. I mean, it's very rare that I'll go past one of the parks, especially on the weekend, and there's not some kids kicking a ball around in the off season. There's a lot of boys, like Lizzie was saying, that sort of do a community game at, is it Heath Johnson? Down that way. There's a lot of boys that go and play down there. And we do get quite a few at Childers Road as well in the holidays. You know, there'll be boys down there. But even then, without the coach present, you can see what they're trying to achieve. He's still very structured. You know, they're working
Shooting.
Predominantly shooting, but they're very focused on technique. Whereas, you know, we were just, when I was going, we were being stupid.
Yeah, and you tend to watch when you have those small-sided games with kind of, there are no rules, it's just get the ball in the back of the net. You tend to learn nice tricks and stuff off the other kids, and you get an opportunity to try them more so than in a structured coaching environment where you might have to play left back, or, you know, in those games you can play wherever you want.
No, I can vouch for the fact that coaches actively discourage that sort of football now. Stuff that would have got you picked for a club when I was a kid. They'll say, please don't do that.
A little bit of flair and
they don't take risks, and you know that's what's missing. You know, and even just, I mean, it's a terrible reference, but I was watching England this morning. Jude Bellingham's running around the pitch everywhere, taking risks, playing like school football, and everybody else is super structured, quite negative, like holding the ball up. And tactically, it's great, but it's not much fun to watch.
Yeah. No, I think it's any opportunity. Just an example. obviously everyone knows I coach hockey, but I remember turning up late to a training that's terrible. That's like number one thing as a coach. You shouldn't be turning up late. But anyway, turned up late and the boys had just started. They just jumped out and started playing a game. And they all saw me, but then I just sat on the dugout and just let them go. And it was just like, I was going to watch, see what they do. And they just played for like 20 minutes, a game, non-stop. Didn't stop, just played, had fun, yelling. They were just doing everything that they wanted to do, but it was quite nice just to, okay, let's just step back and see what they do and let's just let them have a go and have fun. So I think it's just not losing sight of that as well. Like we don't have to be quite structured, and it's just how do we integrate that play into it. And I think, as you mentioned, Lizzie, like when the boys are, even though they're shooting and practicing those goals, they're watching each other and seeing what they do. We try and encourage that within our trainings in terms of if someone tackles you, ask them afterwards, how did you tackle me? What did I do that made you, so you can learn a little bit more as well. Something that's always interests me is like, how do we get the kids to learn through play and through, I suppose, the structured part of it. So just moving into next question, what got you interested in coaching?
For me, it was a guy that was at the club that I was playing at. He's had a very he's had a massive effect on particularly women's football and disability football in the UK. The club I used to be a part of, the little local team there, they're sort of a nationally recognised body for development and bits and pieces. And the guy that was there at the time, Keith Hardy, he sort of gave me an opportunity. He saw me watching my little brother. I was bored out of my mind watching the little 5-year-olds play. And he's, do you want to come over and help me coach this team over here? And I was like, yep, sound, I'll come and have a go. Like 10-year-old boy, any excuse to be in charge. And as it happened, he was coaching his young daughter's team. So the same age group, 5-year-olds. And he said, I just need someone to come and give me a hand. And at the time, for the next few weeks, I was carrying balls, just literally being a gopher. But that very early start in it, I was hooked. At 10, 11 years old, I was already in the process of coaching. And then I was involved long term, right the way through, even more so than as a player from an early day. And that really was the galvanising point for me. That was like, yeah, I love this. I loved it, like helping them out, but and yeah, there's a little bit of loving being in charge, but there was also, we come back to it later, I'm not sure, but it was the moments in the game, like seeing them experience success. It was actually a good experience for a young man, especially to be able to say, I want you guys to succeed, and it doesn't really need to affect my ego for you to do that. So, yeah, it was very much that was a clear moment that got me into coaching.
Yeah, mine was one, I wanted to give something back, but also I saw men not training girls how they should learn. There was a lot of yelling and screaming, and girls just didn't actually understand the terminology that some of the coaches were using. And I could see potential in a lot of the girls. I did coach boys as well, but it was girls that made me want to help them more, because they dropped their heads real easily. So I just wanted them to be the best that they could be. So that was pretty much why I started coaching.
When you were talking around seeing male coaches coaching female players, were there many female coaches when you were growing up in the sport?
We had, I'd say one was a manager, Judy O'Rourke, and then our rep coach, Kauri Pohatu. She was the only woman coach I had growing up. But then we had a lot of male icons too, like Lenny Card, Les Todd. As a kid, I was coached by Kevin Fallon, but I was like 5, 6.
Still though.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and there was Kenny Creswell, so there was a lot of the city players did coach a lot of us girls growing up and stuff too.
Looking at the ones that were yelling and stuff like that, like what was different about the way that you coached, and what was different about the way the women coached compared to the men?
So you can yell at a guy, from observation, and they'll take it on the chin and they'll get the job done. Whereas girls, you yell at a girl and they drop their head and they just don't want to do it anymore. So you got to be a little bit the positive sandwich if you can. Yeah, there are times as a coach, if it's just not getting in, you'll get a bit growly, but you're not yelling and screaming at an individual. You try and do it as a whole group, let them all know that that's not good enough.
we've had basketball coaches on here, and we've talked around like coaching boys, same thing, exactly the same thing. You can, if you need to really get a message across and they're not getting it, you can give them a bit of a spray and they get onto it. But with the girls, it's a little bit different. There's nothing wrong with actually coaching differently. We just got to know when we turn on the different ways of coaching. So it's good to hear, really good to hear. Who are your influences? And I know you just mentioned a few people, but were there any influences in your time, either as a player or as a coach, that helped you out or inspired to go on and do the things that you have done?
So with the coaching with Central Football, Blake Mulrooney was a big one there. But prior to that, like we had a team, Te Tairawhiti, and Richard Mulligan was the coach of that. And he was real, like I quite enjoyed how he coached. He did talk a lot. Yeah, we took it on board as women because he would coach us way different to how he coached men. Lenny Card, he taught me heaps. I was at high school when he came along to coach me. Yeah, and he kind of just took me aside, had a few words to me, which made me kind of knuckle down and try a lot harder, whereas I was still playing backyard football because no one had said, hey, you're kind of handy. Yeah, so he was a big influence. And then Scott Hales, like I said, Cody, Pohatu. Yeah, and then just watching, like City had some mean players, like even in their recent years when Kevin Fallon was coaching them. Like, the guy Jordan, who's not with us anymore, he was such a good striker. So it was, yeah, just watching, I guess.
What qualities of those coaches or players that stood out to you that made them like good influences?
They could back themselves up because they had the experience of playing at top level. So you just admired them for that. And then they actually taught you good values of the game and just the little things like when the ball goes out, get back into position, you know, those little things like that, which you'd never know. Like you'd just be like, oh, the ball's out. Well, you know, face the ball, don't have your back to the ball, you know, all those little things that professionals know.
I think that's input you're only going to get from those guys that have played that level. That's the debate with the coaches. Keeper's the one that kind of got me started with it, and particularly in women's football as well, because that's where his major interest point was. Growing up, I mean, obviously I played with my friends, but I watched a lot of Italian football, 90s Italian football on the TV. It was on at like 6 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday morning, and I'd be up every week watching, you know, like Paolo Maldini and George Weah and ridiculous players playing. And it was a time when that league was like pumping, like really the best league in the world, the best players, a lot of flair, you know, very, very much Italian football. And that always made me want to play. But as a coach, there was plenty of influences. I had coaches that influenced me both ways. You know, I had a coach playing early doors in my early teens that was real negative, real aggressive, very hard on the players. You know, and my first instinct when I was becoming a coach was, oh, that's how I have to behave. Like, do I have to be so harsh?
Yeah.
Do I have to yell at people? And he kind of ruined it for me a little bit, which is, you know, then I sort of had an unfortunate side effect that it has made me better as a coach. But I mean, a big influence personally comes from my players. You know, like I've learned a lot coaching at various levels, predominantly youth and development. But there's moments where, as a coach, you will obviously make mistakes. But there's moments where things happen that have taught me a lot more than, you know, a seasoned professional could teach me. You know, I've had a moment in a game where a young girl who was playing for a team I was coaching in a girls' academy that had a fantastic season, hadn't scored a goal. The last game of the season, and it was a cup final. Before the game, she said, do I need to score? And I said, oh, you'll score a goal for me. And she went on the pitch and didn't score. And she came off the pitch and she was devastated. And I couldn't, for the life of me, work out why she was so upset. We'd won the game. She'd played brilliantly. And her dad came and said, she didn't score a goal for you. And that's the kind of moment that you realise that how much impact you can have. And I feel like that influence for me taught me so much about player psychology, but about how my impact on the players, you know, it always needs to be thought through thoroughly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think a lot of my influence comes from the interactions I've had with players, the opportunities I've had with the teams and competitions that I've been involved in.
Yeah. Really nice reflection on that. Lizzie, just going back to your brother, would he be classified as an influencer for you? Because I know, like, looking back at when you were younger and you're out there trying to beat him or...
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. What was about him that pushed you?
I know, as a girl growing up, I just wanted to be like him, really. He was 4.5 years older than me. I had to go to bed earlier than he did, of course. So, he was, I just looked up to him.
Yeah. So looking at the influences, and Lee, you probably touched on a little bit now, like understanding a bit more about what you have to do. Do you both have a coaching philosophy, or do you have what your why is?
With the New Zealand football coach education system, and a little bit when I was learning that having a coaching philosophy is a key part of the game. So most of the coaches you'll talk to that have trained specifically in New Zealand, it's very much a part of their training. And it's something that they have to identify quite early doors, and it's a driving force behind a lot of what they do. Mine's a little wider. Like I said, my experience has been a lot more varied than the vast majority of coaches. So I do have a very strict philosophy. Like, there's things that I can squeeze it down into. Like, I like my teams to nail the basics. Like, let's play perfect basic football. And then that gives us the base then to play with that freedom, to take risks. And I'm also a coach that likes a high responsibility model. So I will allow my players the freedom to adapt as they see fit on the pitch, because obviously they've got a viewpoint I don't have. So, while there's some rigidity to what I do, there's also quite a lot of flexibility and a lot of responsibility handed to them to try something crazy, to change things around, an example would be having their wingers swap sides, because one's faster, one's more technical. It might make the difference against a specific player. But I'm very much a development coach. So again, it comes back to that now the basics thing. I'm quite big on let's, get technique working properly. Let's play through the plan. And then on top of that is where that's where the creativity comes from.
How much influence, and this is going back to the influence question as well, like obviously being in the army and then hearing some of the words that you're using in terms of strict philosophy and stuff like that, like how much of the influence has the army had on you in your coaching role?
It's a weird balance. I had a very specific and difficult job in the army, and I ultimately ended up becoming a teacher, a basic training teacher. And a lot of that, I do. Initially as a coach, very disciplined, and I expected a high level of discipline from my players as well. And I was quite rigid in that this is what you're going to do, this is how you're going to play, and that does harken back to days in the military, but also at the same time it sort of taught me a lot about how individual player psychology and group culture. So esprit de corps is a massive thing in the army. You respect your regiment and your other soldiers, but you would always, at dinner, you'd sing the corps song. You know what I mean? That's just how it worked. And it was something that was sort of not forced on us, but encouraged. And that does sort of come back in a little into how I coach as well, is that culture is really important. I mean, it's off the pitch, and I suppose it should technically form part of my philosophy, but I feel like if we have a good culture, if we have a good relationship between the players, if we have confidence, then that changes how we play. But yeah, it definitely has an impact. Probably more subconsciously than I'd like to think, but it definitely has an influence on it.
No, it's cool. It's nice to hear. It was just interesting when when you said you're from the army, and then just some of the terminology. It's just curious to see how much life can actually help us with our why and what we get up to. Lizzie.
Yeah, I like my team to be a nice tight knit, like whānau. I will look at my players and then try and form a formation of what fits my team, not what fits me. There's certain formations I do like, but it's about how best my team will fit a formation. Yeah, technical, it's something that we've always tried to work on. I like my teams to pass the ball. Yeah, we each year we find our own values of that group and we try and work on those. Yeah, I like a bit of flair. Just it ends up becoming about my team and what their attributes are, and trying to bring up our not so good players to be up with our better ones. Yeah, I just want to help people get better. It's my biggest thing as a coach.
Nice. Are you able to share any tips or examples of how you are able to identify those values from the players? Like, what do you do each year to be able to get them to share with you?
So we're big on team building. So we'll have a gathering. We've done pickleball before. We'll just have a day where we do a whole lot of games, and you kind of pick up people's values. So you just kind of chuck that into the mix, and then try and set goals before the game. Like I'll say, okay, so I've picked up this as a value that most of you carry. So this week our goal is blah, blah, blah. And then just like, yeah, I try to, because women's football here isn't so famous, no one really cares about us too much. I try to give my team a semi-professional experience so that they can semi-be professional the way they play. So they got, like, we have warm-up shirts. We now have a tracksuit to wear to and from. When we have a home game, we all have jobs. It used to be myself and Renee that would do all those jobs, but now we've spread it out amongst the team so that we all feel like we've got, more whānau orientated. So we get there earlier. We set up our field so it looks nice and sharp. We put covers on the dugout. The flags are all out matching. Clean out the men's changing rooms for the other team. Clean the toilets. We do all those sorts of things beforehand, and then we get ourselves ready.
I like that. I heard in there like around identity. That's nice to hear. It's sad to hear that nobody cares. Like, what can you elaborate on that a bit more?
Yeah. I can definitely put a little bit in there. So women's football historically in New Zealand has been mistreated, and I've coached in some big and small regions, with Hamilton Wanderers in the National League, and it was very much we need a coach, anyone will do. Fortunately for them, they dropped on me that had that experience coaching women's football, and that's been a bigger part of my career than coaching men for sure. But again, it's like Lizzie was alluding to, it's underfunded, it's often given less support. Yeah, like this year's probably been the best year. It's 2 years that I've coached ladies football in Gisborne, but this is the first year where we've had referee availability in every game. Like I haven't had to referee myself. We're getting a little bit more respect for female referees coming in, which a lot of that is driven by Lizzie. We
have one ref. Is it just Matt?
Matt Miller's done a lot, yeah. We've had, we usually would get Jeff Griffin, but he's injured.
Yeah.
It's very rare. So we get Breeze Parsons a lot as a young guy.
Okay.
He's in and out occasionally. And then, we're fortunate at Thistle. I've got lots of guys that'll come and referee a game, like Tam, the first team coach. He's a long-standing referee, and we can usually bully him into refereeing a game. He won't volunteer, but if I say, Tam, referee the game, he'd be like, yep, okay, done. But yeah, even the competition structure beyond, from the federation perspective, we look at the pathway for the women, and some clubs have got a really good, complete pathway. But even the competition structure beyond Gisborne, you can see it's kind of an afterthought at times. Like the Central League, the W League, fantastic. Loads of support, loads of funding, loads of effort. But it's predominantly based in Wellington, Auckland, major cities. And like the Federation League for women this year, it's 4 teams. So it's, a lot of focus has gone to the higher leagues. And for me, there's starting to be little holes emerging in the pathway. Like both my team this year and Lizzie's team, probably for the last 5 years, have been, I personally think, at that level, that they could be playing Federation League level. Lizzie's team goes away, beats these teams in tournaments. We had a really close run this year with Wanganui Athletic, but it's 1 goal the difference, and I feel like we made more mistakes than they made positive influence.
It was a high-scoring game too, wasn't it?
Yeah, 5-4. So, for women's football in Gisborne, it needs more support. It needs more funding. It needs more people to take an interest. And it can't always just be, people like myself. It's like Lizzie's saying, we need more female coaches entering at a better level. We've got good female coaches, but they're not getting the opportunity to get training. They're not getting the opportunity to get much support around it. And so then it becomes people like myself that are like, well, why is there a bloke coaching it? Why is there a guy driving it? And for me, being involved with national programs with Lizzie as well, that, we can start to push for that development, for that support, for that recognition. The World Cup was a massive galvanising factor. Mm-hmm. And off the back of that, I've been able to put a lot of time and resources into young women's football, things like the Fantails programme. And that will start to backfill the back end. The more players we can build that relationship with the sport, the more opportunity we've got down the road to have a league with 10 teams rather than 5 or 6. And I think that's where the development will come. And I think the clubs across the board have got to really step up and offer those opportunities for the women to develop as coaches, for them to develop as players, to create pathways. And like I say, we've got good people doing the right things, but Liz can't do it on her own. I can't do it on my own. Jess and a couple of others, Shockers have made a big effort this year. So that's made a difference. But yeah, it needs a lot more push, definitely.
Yeah. And you mentioned around that support, like, is that looking like, I know, like, as you met, like, the clubs need to be doing a lot more. Do we look at competition structures, or is there anything in that space? Because at the moment you said there's how many teams at the moment in the women's grade? 6?
6 this year. But,
6.
And that's an improvement, because was it 4 last year?
5.
5 last year. So
Yeah.
there's
Yeah,
definitely
5.
improvement. There's definitely growth.
Yeah.
And the standard this year has been much more equal than it has historically. We usually have some very, very social players mixed against, like, the likes of Lizzie's team, who are much more competitive. And the young girls' teams with the schools have sort of been edged out now as well. So for me personally, I felt there was a big responsibility on the clubs to soak those players up. And fortunately, it's been great. I mean, I took a big bunch to
Lee got them all.
Well, Charlie Leffer was a really good player. She's playing for United. That's a really young team. There's a couple of the girls playing for Bohemians. Lizzie's got most of the Lytton girls.
The 2 of them.
But yeah, 2 very talented young girls. And then, I was able to bring most of the girls' high team to Thistle to sort of form a team there. But again, it's giving them the time of day. It's giving them the right environment to support that, to encourage it. And some of it has been done really well internally. Mandy at Thistle has done a lot this year to encourage the social side of things. So every 3 weeks we have a social gathering after the games where all the teams come to one venue. And that's been good. I've enjoyed that.
Yeah, well, Mandy wasn't football in the days where everyone just came back to Thistle. So once upon a time I did play for Thistle. And so because we were the only team that had a club rooms, every Sunday everyone would just come back there and have their player of the day and what have you. Prior to that, when I first came into the Women's League, it was all at City. So all the teams would go back to the City club rooms. So just trying to get that culture back in. They didn't do it last year because couldn't get enough people to it. But the year before, they ran a women's prize giving for all the teams. So you got to vote who you thought was the best player of the year, the youth player, all those sorts of things. And that was a real cool night. So they're hoping to do that again this year.
Cool. That's nice. I had a question in my mind around, like, how much influence the Women's World Cup had, what the membership rate would look like afterwards, like whether there'd be a lot more kids wanting to come and play. But I suppose, is it just respect at the end of the day? Like, we just need to respect the women's grade as much as the men's grade. Like, and I've heard just through other people I've talked to, it's like turning up to trainings and the toilets aren't open, or turning up to games and the toilets aren't open. It's just like, why? Like,
yeah, we have to sit down to pee. Like at Nelson Road, we have to go hit the bush.
Yeah,
it's not very.
Well, it's just not right, is it? It's not right.
It's weird. That was my first experience coaching women's football here. I was shocked.
Yeah.
Like for when we were at home for girls' high, they could go across the road to school. But, if you had someone came off and needed to go quickly to the toilet, it's a 10-minute walk, and then there was various places where there's toilets, there's changing rooms, but they weren't open, and you'll be across the Harry Barker situation with hockey. It's so hard to get good relationships.
Well, if United aren't playing down there, they have the key to the toilet. So
it's really difficult. And then I think with the team I've got at Thistle this year, I've been able to throw everything I possibly can at them. Full club room access, use the changing rooms, get good kits, have good support, have physio support, as much as we can possibly throw at it to create exactly what Lizzie was talking about, that more professional atmosphere around the game. And that will then hopefully galvanise the younger girls to be a bit more ambitious. That really there's most of them would say, we'll play for school, and then beyond that, it's like, well, what do we really do outside of the reps program? So, giving them new opportunities, taking them out of district, entering cups, getting good coaches on board, everything we can do to push the game will create, will engender that respect.
We definitely need to look outside, see what else is out there. Kids have got a little bit bored with the rep program because they've been doing it for so long. It doesn't change. It's hard for our kids to get into those central teams. You'll get 1 year, I think the most we had was 6, and that was 2 goalkeepers. Yeah, and you get 1 in each team. They don't have a mate, so then it's awkward for them when they go away for the tournament week. Yeah, it's just, I remember because when I was working for Central Football, I went and did one of the age group teams, and you don't actually get to choose the kids. You just get given a piece of paper. This is your team.
Yeah.
Didn't matter if someone was better. Sometimes that child didn't get in. Yeah, even if it, I think what they should have done was on game days you put other areas' kids' names down rather than your own. I think that would have been a better way to have done it than, I know most of the other development officers were always pushing for their own children.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And I would have behaved the same. But definitely, like with futsal particularly, I've been coaching in the national futsal competition where Central are putting a team in, and we had one representative from Gisborne last year, and that was Dara Mulrooney. And she was the same with the National Youth Women's League, the only representative from Gisborne. And I mean, she was outside fortunate that her dad Blake, had friends in other regions that she was able to go and stay at their house, drive over with them, share travel with them. But it is, I mean, there's limitations in terms of our geographical position that makes it incredibly difficult. However, I definitely think if we were given more exposure, then we'd be able to do more with it. Like if we get 10 players going out to these teams, even just a trial, we can take a minibus. We can mitigate some of the expense. We can find support and sponsorship and fundraising to help those players have those opportunities. Because at the moment, it's, very little recognition for Gisborne players. And we've got a lot of talent. Some of it's raw, but we've got a lot of talent.
I need to go.
Okay.
Is that all right?
That will be fine.
Sorry, I've just got a meeting at 10.
Okay. No, thank you, Lizzie. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Awesome. Sorry.
No, it's all good. It's not a problem.
Lee's got it, eh, Lee?
Yeah. So what she doesn't mention is that it's, there's already tension there because we are against each other this season. So I have to be very polite because Lizzie will give me a hiding.
So just going back to that, like, is that something like, is it system change? Because it's something similar within hockey. Looking at under 18s is a big thing for us. And like, we've never had an under 18 team because a lot of the time we get to that stage of the kids wanting to head away or go into that space. Unless they can see the team or everybody going to jump into the team, then it's like, no, we're out. And then unless they're going to go, if they are going to go away, there's only, like, as you say, 1 or 2 that will go and play for another region because you're essentially having to travel out of the district and put that effort into it. But it sort of came about because we lost our opportunity of a development pathway when our regions got disbanded, and it was quite tough in terms of the kids didn't see a pathway for them within that representative level, I guess.
Yeah, there's definitely work to be done. I think, being able to have seen the federation perspective and the local perspective. I mean, Gisborne's one of those places where if you're in Gisborne for long enough, you start to live and breathe Gisborne. And I think that was interesting as an outsider coming into the region in the development role. Big plans, background in the Waikato and Auckland and the UK and overseas. And then to come into Gisborne and see the particular specific issues that the small region, the isolated region, faces means that, like, we have to explore different approaches, and I think versatility is what will lead the way. And this year we've started with this sort of try and push the boundaries a little bit to do something different. We took a lot of youth teams away to a tournament in Papamoa recently. They performed brilliantly across the board. The raw talent definitely exists in Gisborne, and because it's one of those regions that you have access to so many sports so close together, you never go more than 15 minutes to play sport in Gisborne within the city. And I've had the opportunity to go up the coast as well, and the same thing happens there. There's an abundance of talent, and the East Coast creates fantastic athletes, but again, they lack the fundamental sports education and opportunities that they need to become a New Zealand representative in a sport at some point, and because we produce so few and because there's such a limited availability, we do need drivers within certain areas to do that. And some of it can be done internally, some of it has to come externally. But I think what we're trying to do, in particular with Thistle, is to drive those opportunities, drive those differences, and push everything we can into giving the players a solid pathway, to giving them a rounded football education. And it's difficult,
Oh, yeah.
Everywhere we go, we've got to go like 4 hours minimum to be able to compete, and that puts a lot on players. And even the teams travelling to us in the Federation League from Taranaki, they're 9 and 10 hour drives.
Yeah.
So teams are arriving here and they're exhausted, and so then you can understand why teams and clubs and competitions don't want to come to Gisborne.
Yeah.
And it's the isolation, and there's nothing we can do about it. However, I feel like if we're clever, if we're organised, if we can be as creative as possible, we can create lots of opportunities. And it's sort of going back to the encouraging play in sport. We won't do things that other regions have done because we haven't had access to it. So, it's like this year we'll try and do a pan of football competition, one-on-ones. There's no coaches. It's just they get to show off their skills. And the same with a bit of street football, and to a slightly lesser extent because of our issues with indoor facilities. But futsal is really big. It's a sport that East Coast particularly could thrive in. And when I went up the coast with Central Football, you could see that futsal would thrive there. It's a small-sided game, squads of 6 or 7 are sufficient for a tournament or a match. So it's much easier to put a team together. And, there's a couple of good indoor spaces on the coast, but again, still not big enough to be able to compete properly. I mean, when we went to Papamoa, just a lot of the people, the Gisborne people that were there were like, how come we can't do this in Gisborne? We've got Watson Park, we've got a capacity to do it, we've got the space, but just getting teams to travel to Gisborne, unless we're giving them something incredibly special, is quite difficult. It's a big challenge.
Yeah, it's massive. You're right. You're exactly right. It's like, what can we do creatively or differently to be able to keep our kids here? And I think I'm such a big advocate for students or kids or athletes being able to still stay here in Gisborne and still be able to compete and have that opportunity to play. It's massive. And like even looking at beach, I don't know how much, like if there's beach futsal or beach football, but like things like that can actually, as you say, the point of difference to be able to get people to come here. Yeah, and it brings the fun and the play back into it. And it's what we talked about before. I mean, I actually managed to push through to New Zealand football. So the community pathways manager for New Zealand football, Shane Vroom, is really good. He's heavily supportive of regional football and how we can make those differences, how we can make things happen. And I spoke to him and said, look, we're East Coast. If we can get some sandlots built, we can go and do beach football. And we explored using the area at the side of the Olympic pools. But again, space constraints. It's too close to the road, it's too narrow. And it's something that I think I will continue to push long term, because creating those sandlots is not particularly expensive. It's lining and a little bit of machinery work to set the boards and everything, and then all of a sudden you're good to go. And it's something that will keep coming back. But again, we can play it, and we've got players that can probably play it, but we'd need to go away. Yeah.
And I find it a little bit frustrating that like I've played in a beach football tournament on the side of the river in Cambridge, and yet we live on the East Coast.
Yeah.
We can't find enough sand to play beach football, or at least not, the right conditions.
Yeah. No, it's cool. I like, and just the conversation we'll be having, it's like, even like looking back at the toilets and stuff like that, I think, like, as you said, the support from the clubs, like the clubs to be talking more, looking at more, how do we influence more women coaches to become available? How do we influence like the council or whoever it is that's supposed to be looking after those things of respecting the women's game around opening up toilets? The opportunities to be able to play. It's like, I think anyone and everyone can be advocating for that. And I think that's quite a good call out to the sporting community. It's just, let's support our codes and let's try and get those opportunities going. I've got a few more questions. We're almost running out of time here. There's a couple of questions that it's probably my interest, but whether or not it's the listener's interest, I don't know. But soccer or football, and I know people joke about it a lot. What's the difference? Or I know there's the language of there's soccer and there's football. What can you explain that reasoning around that?
So, this is something I come up against a lot. In England, it's football.
Yeah.
And soccer is almost a bad word. It's seen as an Americanism. Unfortunately, it isn't. So originally, when football was in its first steps, we had very regional versions of it. Then there was regional competitions popped up and international competitions popped up, and it was still football. But the rules were very vague from region to region. So sometimes you could watch England versus Scotland and it looked very much like football. Sometimes you could watch England, Scotland, it very much like rugby.
Yeah.
Rugby football separated itself, and that was the town. But association football, so that was when football started to be an organised national competition. It was association football, and the off-the-cuff way to recognise that from the non-association football teams was to call it, it's the ASOC football, the soccer football.
Oh, yeah.
And it literally came from association. And then, it's been, taken on by the likes of the US with American football, Australia with Aussie rules. Like a lot of other countries already had football, in inverted commas. But that's where it came from. And because of the influence of US media and stuff, it's just become the recognised word. And historically for New Zealand, I can remember one of the early discussions with my father-in-law, very much a rugby man, and so it's just soccer. And I'm like, no. Hold on a minute, it's football. And he's like, no, it's New Zealand soccer. And I'm like, I think it changed a while back to New Zealand football. But yeah, it's one of those things, and it sticks around, and it still makes me itch when I hear soccer too much, but I've sort of got more used to it now. So
yeah, no, that's cool. Thank you for the clarification. And then if we look at the beautiful game, where did that come from?
So there's been a few iterations of that. I think that one's Pele. I think there's loads of people that try and claim it. There's another Brazilian player that I can't remember the name of, and then there was Stuart Halsall or something. There's a commentator in the 50s that used to go on about the beautiful game, but he was talking about one player in particular. Right. Pele sort of popularised it, and he was talking about the nature of the game. It's so exciting, it's so equalising, and early doors with football in England, it was very much a private school, a sort of very upper class sport to play. And as it progressed, it became more and more working class. And so then you've got, the guy that's a bricklayer, and he comes on, he's got a dearer existence, but he comes onto a football pitch and he's able to do all these miraculous things. And it's one of those sports that engenders a lot of passion. Probably a bit less solidified here than it is in the UK, but, just watching the Euros and stuff, you can see the amount of passion. And I watched a video yesterday about the Netherlands supporters. There's a street with about 10,000 people in singing a song. There's very few sports that engender that level of vociferous support, and everyone's got their own identity, and then it's sort of, it's bounced around, and, the Brazilians and the South Americans play a very different form of football, which personally I would call more the beautiful game, because it's just ridiculous to watch. But they went through their phase where it was, no, we want to play European football. It's rigid, it's disciplined, and they wanted to play Jenga football, which was more like dancing. And it's gone through those phases. And then, in the 70s, you got the likes of Ruud Gullit talking about sexy football, and we want to play really creative, really flashy, exciting football and move away from the rigidity again. And it sort of evolves as it goes. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that he was calling it beautiful because it was so exciting to watch, because there was potential for it to change really quickly, and because it was so equalising that everybody could have an input.
Yeah. No, thank you for that. And you're right around the passion of players, I guess, and spectators as well. Like, I've been watching quite a bit of that Welcome to Wrexham.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, it's a great, and I like it in the sense that obviously they show the fans and everything, but they also show the other side of football and what that means for community as well, I think, which is really cool to see. Hey, just to finish us off, what does the value of sport mean to you?
This is one that, I actually find quite difficult to answer, because, I've got my own personal values. For me, sport has played a massive role in my mental health. I came out of the military, not in a good space. Football, really, particularly social football, not competitive, but social football for me was a crutch for quite a long time. And it's still even now, if I go long periods without football, I do start to get a bit fed up. And it's, I picked an injury up the year before last that kept me out for 18 months. And it's tough. Like, coaching, really, having that input with coaching is the only thing that sort of kept me going in the game, and sort of was able to keep me going personally as well. And being back playing this year, working in the sport still is a big influence. I'm able to put a lot of time and effort and energy and passion into what I do, because it controls so much of my sort of mental well-being. And so for me personally, and I see that with other guys as well, just the opportunity to get on the pitch, kick a ball around with limited pressure. We used to do a men's social evening when I lived in Tauranga on a Wednesday night. There was structure enough for us to put 2 teams on a pitch and have a pitch marked out with cones usually. But every Wednesday all year round, there was a wide variety of ability levels, but there was never any pressure to win or lose or league positions or anything. And that was massive for me. And it's something I have tried to push for here, along with things like walking football. So we had a debate about the Masters tournament with some of the life members in the club. And they were like, is there an over 60s section? And I was like, well, really? There could be, but if you want, we can go and look at doing some walking football. And then they get to have that impact again. They get to have that input. They get to get out on the pitch, and it's physically and mentally massive. And it's the same for the kids, like Gisborne, for my family in particular, has been really, really opening, really mind-opening. The girls have played sports that they never would have played. I stood for an hour and a half watching Ultimate Frisbee at Gisborne Intermediate the other day, and both my older daughters have played and loved it. And they can do everything in Tauranga. It was difficult. If we wanted to do surf lifesavers, it was an hour north to Waihi, and football, it was 45 minutes south to Papamoa through the city. And so in Gisborne, we've got a rare opportunity where they can do anything, because it's always so approachable, so easy to get into. I mean, you've got martial arts, we've got water sports, we've got everything. And sort of, I find a balance for me in that I want to encourage the football players to do as much as possible as well. I mean, I've got a prime example. There's two boys that were playing junior football, fantastic football players, both of them, fantastic rugby players, fantastic triathletes, really, really good at surf lifesavers, and it sort of worked both ways. There was never an off season for them, which, maybe sometimes balance is better, but in the off season, they would always come into the football season super fit, because they've been doing surf lifesavers, big lung capacity, incredibly strong. So there wasn't a lot of preparation needed with them. Whereas, the football purists, you play and then there's a long off season in New Zealand. So for, 4 or 5 months, it's like twiddling your thumbs, like, what do I do? Or there's futsal or maybe beach football or street and stuff like that. But, I personally think that, like, especially like my girls as well, it does teach you a lot about discipline. It does teach you a lot about commitment. And it does give you that opportunity, regardless of the level you're at, to have a little bit of fitness as well, like it might not seem like it sometimes, but I mean, I've watched pickleball, which is, it's one of those sports that's frustrated me massively because it hits us with futsal. So we fight over court space. Yeah. And I've played it once in my life, but my wife's tried it. She loved it. My older daughter's tried it. She loved it. And you can see the growth of the sport. So clearly, there's a lot of value to it. Yeah. And I think it is. I think for me personally, that the core of it is the mental health value, but there's so much more. I mean, my oldest daughter did a speech at school a couple of months ago, and it was, is there a sport for everybody? And it was an opportunity to explore ridiculous stuff, but also cultural sports. She's played karahi this year, which has been huge for her. Like, she's got Māori heritage, so to be able to sort of be in touch with that. And it's another thing she can go and throw herself at, which is the way she plays. And I was talking to her about kabaddi, to look at quite a strong Indian cultural sport, which I grew up in the community I grew up with. I had a lot of friends that were doing that. So I got to go and watch it and have a go at it, and it's always sort of stuck with me. But to be able to do all those different things, to have all those access, it's huge. And I think, resources aside, Gisborne is a particularly great opportunity for athletes to do 20 different sports. We're still going to knock heads with netball and hockey and other sports.
Yeah. Yeah.
The availability to do everything is just, it's been staggering. Like water polo this year, volleyball at school, everything.
Yeah. No, it's exciting. And it's good to hear. As you say, there's all the opportunities, and obviously we're doing our best to try and get an indoor stadium as well. And I think once that comes in, man, like, the opportunities are going to just tenfold, like, things that we can do. But thank you, Lee. Appreciate your time today. Like, honestly, the insights, the reflection, what you and Lizzie are doing within that women's space as well is massive to hear, and it's exciting. It's really exciting to see what you guys are up to. And thank you to Lizzie as well. She had to shoot off a little bit early, but appreciate your time.
No worries.
And thanks for coming on.
No problem. Pleasure.